You sit down to eat. Plate in front of you, food still steaming. And within about 4 seconds, your hand is already moving towards your phone. Not because you're starving for information, not because the meal is boring. Something older than your phone, older than your fork, is pulling your attention away from the food in front of you. And it's not a flaw. It's a leftover instinct from a time when eating without paying attention to your surroundings could get you killed. You've probably blamed yourself for this. You call it a bad habit, a lack of discipline, something to fix with an app that locks your phone during dinner. But the truth is stranger than willpower. Your ancestors couldn't eat a meal without scanning either. They just weren't scanning a screen. They were scanning the tree line. Let's start with something almost nobody thinks about. For most of human history, eating was never a private, focused, single-task activity. It was, by necessity, one of the most vulnerable moments of the day. Think about it. When you're eating, your hands are occupied. Your guard is down. Your attention is split between chewing, swallowing, and whatever's directly in front of you. For an early human standing in open grassland or crouched near a kill, that moment of focus was exactly when a predator could close the distance, exactly when a rival group could strike, exactly when something could go wrong. So evolution didn't reward humans who ate with total narrow focus. It rewarded humans who could eat and monitor at the same time. Bite, glance up, chew, glance around, swallow, check the horizon. That fractured, half-distracted way of eating wasn't a failure of attention. It was the safest way to eat. You're not failing to focus on your meal. You're running ancient software that assumes focusing too hard on your meal is dangerous. Now, here's where the story gets layered. The anthropologist Kim Hill spent years studying the ache, a hunter-gatherer society in Paraguay, and documented something critical about how food actually moved through these communities. Meals weren't usually solitary. They were shared, negotiated, and constantly renegotiated. Meat from a hunt didn't just belong to the hunter. It got distributed, sometimes immediately, sometimes through complex social expectations across the group, which means eating was never just biological. It was social currency in real time. Who got food, how much, and when said something about alliances, debts, and status. You couldn't just put your head down and eat. You had to track who was watching you eat, who you owed, who owed you. Mealtime was data collection. Sound familiar? You're not scrolling because you're bored. You're checking if you're missing something socially relevant. Your brain still treats that buzz on the table the way an ache hunter treated movement at the edge of the clearing. Maybe it's nothing, but maybe it's something you need to know before everyone else does. Let's add another layer. The psychologist and evolutionary anthropologist Robin Dunbar has spent decades researching something he calls commensality, the science of eating together. Across his research on social bonding, Dunbar found that eating in groups isn't just about getting calories in. Shared meals trigger measurable increases in trust and social closeness, partly through the release of endorphins tied to synchronized communal activity. Groups that eat together regularly report stronger social bonds than those who don't, even when the food itself is identical. In other words, your brain was built to treat eating as a social event, not a solo task, which creates a strange problem in the modern world. You're often eating alone, at your desk, in your car, standing at the kitchen counter scrolling through your phone. Biologically, your brain registers that solitary eating as slightly off, slightly incomplete, so it reaches for the closest substitute it can find. A feed of other people's voices, faces, and updates. Not because you're addicted to your phone specifically, but because eating without any social input at all feels evolutionarily unfinished. That's the itch your thumb is scratching. Not boredom. Absence. There's a third piece here, and it comes from a very different angle. The Oxford researcher Charles Spence studies what he calls gastrophysics, the science of how our senses, attention, and environment shape the actual experience of eating. One of his consistent findings is that distraction measurably changes how much we taste, how full we feel, and how satisfied we are after a meal. People eating in front of a screen tend to eat faster, eat more, and remember less about what they actually consumed. This isn't just modern overstimulation. It's an attention system designed to split itself the moment food is on the table, now colliding with food that's abundant, processed, and engineered to be eaten quickly. Your ancestors split their attention between bites and the tree line because survival depended on it. You split your attention between bites and a screen because something in your nervous system still insists that full, undivided focus on a meal is somehow risky. So here's what's actually happening every time you sit down to eat and reach for your phone within seconds. Your brain registers stillness. Stillness used to mean exposure. So it searches for stimulus the way your ancestors searched the horizon. It finds your phone. Your brain registers solitude if you're eating alone and tries to fill the social gap that mealtimes were built to satisfy. It opens an app full of other people. Your brain registers information gaps. In a hunter-gatherer band, knowing who has food, who's coming back from a hunt, who's arguing near the fire, mattered immediately. Now, that same hunger for social information gets redirected into messages, notifications, and feeds. None of this means you're broken, or weak, or addicted in some shameful way. It means you have a Pleistocene-era attention system trying to do its job inside a world that no longer matches its original design. So what do you actually do with this? You can't go back to eating in groups around a fire every night, constantly tracking who owes who. But you can work with your biology instead of fighting it like it's a character flaw. If solitude is part of the problem, the fix isn't more discipline, it's more company. Even a short voice call during a solo meal or eating near a coworker without talking much satisfies more of that ancient social requirement than people expect. Your nervous system doesn't need deep conversation. It needs the mere presence of another nervous system nearby. If stillness triggers scanning, give your attention somewhere safer to land than a notification feed. Looking out a window, watching something with no urgency attached to it, even just having background noise that isn't competing for your engagement, can satisfy that ancient scanning reflex without hijacking your whole meal. And if information gaps are pulling you toward your phone, it helps to remember that almost nothing arriving during your 15-minute lunch is the modern equivalent of a hunting party returning with news. Most of it can wait the length of a sandwich. What's strange, and maybe a little comforting, is that the urge itself isn't a glitch. It's evidence that you're still wired the way humans have always been wired, dropped into an environment that doesn't offer the things that wiring expects. Shared food, visible company, real information about real people nearby. You sit down to eat. Plate in front of you, food still steaming. Your hand starts to move toward your phone the way it always does. But this time, you notice it for what it actually is. Not weakness, not distraction, just an old, patient instinct, still scanning the tree line, still looking for company, still waiting for a world that hasn't existed in a very long time.